Hello, and welcome to the next in our series of online virtual trainings brought to you in partnership between the Smithville Area Chamber of Commerce and the Smithville Public Library, as well as two of our very appreciated uh, funding partners, the Texas State Library Archive Commission and the Institute of Museum and Library Services. We certainly appreciate your support as we continue to bring these important classes to the Smithville area and to anyone that wants to watch them online. If you are interested in watching any classes, go to smithvilletx.org and click on events and click on virtual classes. And all of the 40 classes that we have offered through this series will be available there on that page. They're also available on our Smithville Area Chamber of Commerce Facebook page, as well as the Smithville Public Library Facebook page. Today, we're very excited to welcome Sarah O'Brien, who is going to give us a very interesting class. And Sarah, I'm going to let you take it from there and explain your class and get started, okay?
Perfect. Thank you so much, April. Excited to be here today, and hopefully you guys watching at home will learn just a little bit of something. So we're going to talk today about small business survival and really focus on revenue diversification and what you can do to try and make your business more pandemic proof is what I like to call it. And so kind of on the agenda today, because this is being recorded and it's going to be available forever, we're going to do just a brief overview of what it looks like today, because if we've learned anything in the last year is that we have no idea what's going to happen. And so since this content will be available, I want anyone that watches it in a year or two to understand we were talking about this, because I may be completely wrong depending on what happens next. But I want you guys to have a sense of that. We'll talk about Revenue 101, why diversification is important. And we're going to do a little case study of a small business that is really doing diversification well. And we're going to talk about the need to pivot, because pivot's not going away. We need to practice the twirling and the pivoting, nonstop. And then give you guys some tips for ways that you can actually do revenue diversification in your own businesses. So without further ado, we're just going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, got to start at the beginning. So today is July 29th, 2021. And a lot has happened in the last year and a half, has it not? And there's a lot more that's going to happen, and we don't know what that is. We came out of what we thought was the end of the pandemic this spring. Governor opened Texas back up. All of our sectors were, rising. The travel industry was getting back to business, and Texas was looking really, really strong. We had a lot of great momentum. And not saying that that's necessarily gone anywhere, but it's kind of curious right now. We don't know what is going to happen. Case counts are rising. Masks are nowhere near gone. They're here to stay. We've got to get people vaccinated. And so we're really at a pivotal point where we have no idea. Thankfully, we know a lot more than we did this time last year. And our business community has done a lot of amazing things in the last year and a half. The innovation has been tremendous. And so that will hopefully continue no matter what happens next. Talk about disruption. I think that the COVID-19 pandemic and, myriad of other things are all disruptions. But and I guess technically speaking, there are things that are not natural disasters. Disruption can be any change in the way you do business or any change in the way your customers choose to do business. Innovation has caused a lot of market disruption over the last 30, 20, 10, 15 years. But really, innovation has been affecting small business and retail since the beginning of time. We used to order houses out of the Sears catalog. We used to only shop on Main Street where everything was. And then we had shopping malls and strip centers and Amazon. And so everything gets disrupted at one point or another. And I don't think that is anything that will ever change. I think that whether it be a supply chain shortage, logistics challenges, floods or fires, pandemics, government shutdowns, disruptions are here to stay. And we can't always plan for what type of disruption is going to happen next. But what we can do is know that there is something coming. And I'm not saying we need to have a negative outlook and think the world is always going to end, but we need to put our business revenue streams and our models together in a way that it won't matter so much if we have a disruption, because we will have other avenues and other parts of our business model that we can lean on in those times of disruption that we need the extra support. So it's been chaotic, right? Life has been chaotic. I know we're all tired, and there's a lot of things that we can't control. We can't control other people. We can't control market conditions. We can't control the government. We can't control who goes and gets a vaccine. But we can work to set ourselves up for success, as I mentioned, and to become more pandemic proof, and to use those disruptions in our lives really as an innovation driver. So all great change is preceded by chaos, a wise man once said. And then I think it's George Bernard Shaw that says, the unreasonable man is the one that causes change, because the people that are reasonable just are fine with the status quo. And it's really the person that raises question to the way things are and is unreasonable in their expectations of themselves and others that really make things happen. And so we have to understand that that is not always a bad thing. It's, in my opinion, a really good thing, because being unreasonable leads to innovation. Fear is another innovation driver. Fear is a good thing. I tell people all the time, it's the human body's and mind's natural response to danger. It was designed to protect us, right? And so instead of running away from that fear, we need to embrace that fear. And last year, fear caused a lot of great things to happen. Not always all great things, but fear caused our small businesses to get online. They caused our small business community to figure out delivery services, right? They caused our governments to live stream all their public meetings. We had to meet somehow, right? The Attorney General will get mad at us. So let's figure it out. We're going to get it done. And we did. And so we have to understand that and be okay with the chaos and the change and the disruptions, and try to really embrace them in a way that lets us fuel our creativity and drive our innovation. And so that's just what it's all about. And I can talk about that for hours, but I know you guys are interested in what you can actually do for your small business. So we're going to go back to the basics. I'm not a math person. I hated accounting. I hate math. I hate all of it. And so to have me teaching a class about numbers would be comical. This class has nothing to do with numbers. Okay. We're not going to talk numbers. We're just talking about revenue types and creative ideas to generate more revenue. But we're not going to actually talk about numbers. But I did want to go over just revenue 101 real quick. And I know most of you probably know this, but let's talk about it. Revenue is income that a business receives as a result of your activities, whether that be selling products and services or something else. Depending on who you ask, there are various types of revenues. It depends on what type of accounting degree, I guess, and what industry they're in. But generally speaking, for most small businesses, there's really three types of revenue that companies have in their business books. Okay. And the first one is sales revenue. And that's obviously from selling a product, a service, an event space, selling yourself, whatever it is, it's selling your expertise. That's your sales revenue. Incidental revenue is the second one. And it's revenue. It's typically in a small or insignificant amount. It's received in the course of performing business activities, but it's not generated through your primary source of business. So interest earned on deposits in your bank account is a good example of incidental revenue. And there's lots of others. And then non-operating revenue is revenue that comes from the peripheral, or it's not your core operations. Rent, if you are in property management or you're renting out a portion of your company's office space, is a non-operating revenue. It doesn't have anything necessarily to do with your business model, but it does, generate revenue, and it comes in as in your bank account. You can do something with it, right? So it's good, but it's not your core business operations. All your core business operations are that sales revenue, okay? Unless you're in the apartment complex management business or something like that, then your revenue from rent is actually not going to be on that other side of things. So when we talk about revenue, let's talk about small business and just get down to the basics really quick, because I believe that most small businesses, I know they're all run by humans, and humans, we intend to always, we want to be great. We want to be the best at things. But generally speaking, we don't know how to execute that. And so most small business owners settle to be good and not great. We're making it, right? We're getting by. We're paying our bills every month. We're getting new customers and we're doing the things that we have to do. We're living comfortably, hopefully. But we're not necessarily always great. So we do that because when we start a business, we're doing that typically because we're passionate about something, right? We're passionate about selling piggy banks, or we're passionate about cooking bacon and eggs for breakfast for folks. But we may not be the experts on marketing or revenue diversification or all of the other things that are involved in running a business, right? And so we start our business, we find a consistent and a fruitful revenue stream. And it's a kind of our fixed income. We typically know sort of what that may be every month. I'm sure it varies some, but generally speaking, you have an idea. And once we get comfortable, it's like human nature again, we're comfortable. And comfort comes from a place where you're not in fear at all. And so sometimes it's being uncomfortable and sitting in a place of discomfort will drive us to greatness, as I was talking about. Consistency is good. I don't want you to be inconsistent, right? But what happens when that income stream becomes compromised? When it's disrupted, when the government shuts you down, when your customer base can't attend any of your events and you can't host your events. That leaves you, your business, and your employees financially vulnerable. Thankfully, the government stepped in a lot this year and helped many small business owners out. But depending on a single revenue source is risky. The pandemic proved it, without a shadow of a doubt. No single industry will always flourish if they're just dependent on a single source of revenue or a single type of customer, because unexpected circumstances can make a business and an industry tank at any time. Travel industry, the oil and gas industry, those are kind of the two big ones this last year, right? It doesn't matter how good the product, the destination, doesn't matter how much people needed it, we couldn't get to it even. And typically a disruption will cause us to maybe not ever go back to where we were as well. And so we've got to think about disruptions as not only being, something that happened once, but it may be something that happens once or twice or three times, and we don't ever get back to normal. We keep saying the new normal. Well, I don't know what normal is anymore. And I don't think we will for a long time. And I don't think our old normal was necessarily exactly where we all needed to be as small business owners, right? And so revenue diversification is critical. It's so important to your sustainability and your resilience as a business community, to the resilience of your community and its economic market. And so really to minimize the risk in your small business, and I'm not saying diversification will ever take all the risk away. It doesn't. You can have your hands in 900 pots and still it won't be enough, because business is just risky. But you can try to play the deck in your favor, right? And let's try to stack those cards and those revenue streams up where we are protected more so than if we only got one deck of cards, okay? And so you've got to build that up through innovation and the framework to support whatever it is you're doing. And so I know, and you know how important revenue diversification is, or you wouldn't be watching this. I understand that. And why is it important? Not only just for our survival, that we need more than one income stream, but why? We don't know. Just kidding. We have to have, because it also trains us to do new skill sets. It exposes us to new customers and new friends and new clients. It really helps build our internal skill sets, our external markets and relationships, and our networks. It creates partnerships. And so taking the money off the table, because like I said, I don't like money. I don't like talking about money. If your bottom line is fine and you think you'll be fine no matter what the next pandemic is, think about revenue diversification as a way to really grow and develop you and your business in a variety of other ways. And that's the network and the relationships and that positive goodwill and just learning something new every day. And so it's just really important for a variety of reasons. I will tell you the top three. Obviously, withstanding economic downturns is number one. We know, right? If an industry or sector is facing a downturn and sales start to go down or disappear, you have to protect your business, and the layers of insurance, besides going shopping for your, a new insurance broker or a new policy, is by having those other revenue sources to fall back on, which allow you to keep moving forward to pay your employees. It's not just about us as business owners. You got staff and vendors, and everybody is dependent upon one another. It's this ecosystem. And I think playing offense is better than defense. Number two, creativity and innovation require clarity and confidence, and those become more and more difficult to obtain and possess when your business is in fight or flight mode. We've been in fight or flight mode for months, a year and a half. And that, yes, we've had a lot of great innovation, but it's also very difficult to be innovative when you're always in that fight and flight mode, that reactionary and what's coming next. And so if you can be offensive and plan ahead instead of what is just reacting to what happens to you, that is going to allow you to be refreshed and really drive that creativity and that innovation more than you ever could imagine that you could. And number three, it really expands your visibility and your reach, which is what I just kind of touched on. It's that network and that brand awareness and letting people know who you are and that you're there to do business with. It's your visibility in the different markets. It can often act as a feeder system to other sectors. I know lots of businesses and business owners that have completely changed who they are as a business or who they are as a professional, right? Because they were exposed to something different. And so the possibilities are endless, and you don't know what the future holds. And so you could become an entirely different business, an entirely different individual, just by exploring those different avenues out there. Everybody likes change, even though we're afraid of it sometimes, right? Let's move on. Talk to you guys about a couple that I just love. This is Kevin and Brandy Harper. They are a small business husband and wife duo. And they have mastered revenue diversification, in my opinion, at their newest venture, which is located in Round Top, Texas. And we'll talk about the name of the venue and all that stuff in just a minute. And this is kind of them having a serious conversation. I love this picture. If you notice Brandy's face, but let's talk a little bit about where Brandy and Kevin came from. And Brandy is a super talented designer and creator. This is a picture of Warren Weather at her store in the Galleria Mall in Dallas, Texas. It's a big market.
Sarah, I'm going to jump in just for a minute and tell you I'm not seeing a picture.
Well, let's see. That's very interesting. What do you see now? Nothing?
No.
Okay. Let me get that. The whole time we hadn't seen a screen? Or...
I just realized I didn't see that picture of the.
I no longer have a share option on my Zoom, April.
So I have it set for you to share.
Okay. That is so weird. Let's see, speaker view. Well, I am full screen. Oh, there we go. It says I'm sharing. Now it's showing back up. Okay. Y'all bear with us just a minute. Life is not anything if we don't have some technical challenge. So let me, I'm just going to stop sharing, April. I'm going to stop it and then start it back over. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know where it went, but. Okay. Let's try this out. What about now?
Got it. It has come back. Fantastic.
Who knows where, but I guess Brandy couldn't. She was gonna try to pop in today, but she had something come up. But this is Worn and Weathered. As you can see, this is her store in the Galleria Mall in Dallas. As I talked about, she is a super talented fashion designer and does great interior design, a super creative spirit. They had this store in Dallas, I think, for close to 10 years. They've traveled the country doing different shows and festivals, including those in Round Top, Texas. A couple of years ago, they, like many business owners in the country, really decided that they wanted something different, right? And Brandy and Kevin love Round Top, Texas. Round Top, Texas, for those of you that don't know, is population 90 most of the year. Twice a year, that population grows to literally hundreds of thousands. And there are vendors and shoppers from all over the world, not just the country, that transform the Round Top, Warrington, Texas area into the biggest antique and flea market that you've ever seen. And so I love Round Top during the fall and spring show, but I really love Round Top when the shows aren't going on. It's a charming, idyllic little town. I'm even talking about it publicly because we don't want everybody to move there. But Brandy and Kevin really wanted to move to Round Top. Now you can imagine that population 90 for 9, 10 months out of the year, right? The other 2 months she's going to have great foot traffic compared to her foot traffic at the Galleria is quite different, right? And so how's she going to make her numbers work? How are they going to feed their family? How are they going to pay their bills? And so they had to figure out some ways to generate additional revenue in a diverse manner, because Brady knows that anything can happen. And so this, the picture you see of the building, that's Brandy's. That's the front of her store, Harper Worn and Weathered in Round Top, Texas. It's the same place where she's got up at the spring and fall show. It used to be called the Christmas store for anyone from that area. And it was the field back behind there is full of vendors twice a year. But they decided to move to Round Top and to invest in this property so she could have her store there and they could live there. I mentioned Brandy is a very talented designer, so I've got just a couple of pictures of that. But what happens on a Saturday and Sunday in Round Top, Texas in June? Right? Not a whole lot. Starting to pick up, but definitely not the type of foot traffic. And so what else could Brandy do? It doesn't matter how talented she is and how amazing her unique, one of a kind designer clothes are or her vintage pieces. It doesn't matter because if there's not enough customers to buy them, it doesn't matter how good your product is. They're about to work. They moved in approximately 13 old houses, or I think 2 of them are old general stores from the region, and start construction on building really kind of a venue destination type thing. You can see the signs over there. Those are the other stores. So several of the buildings contain other stores. So there's actually a shopping experience. You can go into Brandy's and you go in and visit some of these other merchants and see their wares as well, right? So she's got her retail side of things, and she's also generated some rental income every month, right, off of these vendors that are renting these spots. It's good stuff, isn't it? But that's not enough, because what if something happens to those vendors and they can't pay their bills, or she can't fill the spaces? Who knows? So let's take a look. Like I said, she's a beautiful designer. The beds that you see, those are Airbnb and VRBOs that are on the second floor of some of those buildings. And then there's some individual units on the first floor. And those not only fill up at showtime, but they're starting to get traffic year round. Got to figure out what happens if people don't want to stay in hotel rooms and they're not shopping. Everybody always has to eat, right? We're humans. And so they've added a little bandanas bar, beer and wine, but they also serve food, and she is a delicious cook, I tell you. Bombshell Betty's store actually has an apartment on the back of it. So she actually lives there as well. So she's getting additional income that way. They obviously bought that property, and so they're getting vendor rental fees and income twice a year at the spring show. Brandy also does custom interior design. And so they've diversified their revenue streams. And so no matter what happens, there's going to be at least 1 or 2 pieces of what they have going on that's going to bring in some type of revenue so they can feed their family and pay their bills. And so I'm going to go over again. We've got retail. We've got the custom interior design and custom fashion. We've got the restaurant and bar. We've got the rent from 5 different stores, which really helps her retail store. It's not a competition because that creates that shopping experience. Rent from the annual shows, the vendor fees that set up in the fields that are still up there, the 8 different Airbnb and VRBO rooms, the residential income from the apartment. And so that's a big diversification, right? So I just want all you guys to go out and find you some old buildings and get some vendors and design some rooms, and you guys will be good. That's how you do revenue diversification, right? Just kidding. We're not all Brandy and Kevin Harper, right? That's great for them. Um, but we're not all as passionate about those things as Brandy is. We don't all have a piece of land we can go invest in. We don't all have a family that can help us rebuild these buildings, right? And so her revenue diversification isn't necessarily going to work for me or you or everybody else. Um, but you got to figure out what works for you and your business. And it's difficult for me because I don't know all the different types of businesses that you guys own and operate. But we're going to kind of go over some general tips and tricks that you can use to diversify your revenue. I mentioned earlier the pivot is not going away. And I thought, a year or two ago when somebody said we're pivoted, I was like, where did they get that? And then I remembered it's from Ross. He coined the pivot and not the coronavirus pandemic. But we have to figure out a way to move and to be nimble and adaptable, because no matter what, the coronavirus pandemic will end, right? We will move on to better times, but there will always be something, whether it's a market disruptor like a new technology, or it's a new competitor that moves in right across the street from you. Or maybe it's that there's a completely new digital media space that we can't even fathom, right? 10 years ago, we didn't have to worry about Instagram sales, but that's the deal now. And so we don't know what the pivot may be, but we have to be ready for it. And we have to be open to new ideas for all of these different types of revenue diversification. So I think the easiest thing to do, first of all, is to take a look at your product line, the services you offer, right? How can you add complementary product mixes to your inventory? If you sell lawn and garden supplies, and as we know, everybody was building outhouses and adding on to their house, right? And you notice that your shed sales or whatever it is was way up, maybe you can invest and start focusing on those. Is your profit margin better on your physical buildings than it is on a $5 garden rake? I don't know, but take a look at your product line and the profit margin on your different product lines and your different services. And what is there a need for additionally? What is easy to add and easy to convert to? And take a look at trying that out. And what about when we talk about product line expansion and service delivery? Don't be afraid to cut something out. So we're all at capacity, right? And I'm telling you guys, y'all can do all these new things, and it's exhausting. Oftentimes we do a lot of things because that's the way we've always done it, and that's just what we do. But if you can't find a compelling reason for one particular product or one particular service, other than the fact that that's just what you do, that's not enough. And so don't be afraid to let something go to refocus your attention on a different diversification or different revenue source. I'm not saying you can get rid of everything, right? But don't be afraid to say no. I just really wanted to mention that. And what about your market? We have our products, we have our services, but what about where we're delivering them? Is there room to expand and to grow that, to offer our home delivery service in the town next door instead of just in our community? And so let's figure out a way to get our data and understand who our current market is if we don't, because we need to know that first. And then what is the potential to expand that market? Because that's, growing our revenue. It may not be diversification, but it can be diversification because every market has a different set of circumstances that affect it. And so if you are in more than one market, if there is, God forbid, a tornado in your town or something that disrupts your market, but you're still selling products in another market, then that revenue is not affected. And so it is in essence both a revenue growth model tactic and a revenue diversification model tactic. So make sure you take a look at your market and where you are and where else you can go. Membership, subscriptions, every business is different, but this is a great way to build, that solid revenue stream every month. You know how many members you have, whether it's annual or monthly. You know how many subscriptions you have, and there are ways to automate that payment that helps them with your cash flow. But it's a big deal. And so, do you have a product or a service that you sell that would make a good subscription or a good membership based service or product? I don't know. But I suspect you may have something. And I think from 2004 2018, Forbes said, I think this particular market segment grew like 500%. It was just substantial because we all have our phones. We like everything at the touch of our hand, right? We can just point, click, bring it. And we subscribe to things all the time and don't even realize it. I will tell you, as a person, a small business owner, you can get, there's several apps to check regularly what subscriptions you have in case you're like me and you sign up for something and didn't even realize it. And so it will tell you, what you're spending monthly on your subscriptions and monitor those. That's important from the business side of things because we need to know what we're spending out. Not so much focused on the diversification, but you need to know what you're spending. So there are apps to help with that. And I can think of monthly meal services are a great one. There's a lot of VIP membership type things where you get exclusive first look shopping, right? Or maybe you are a consultant and you provide media services. Why not get your folks on a retainer, right? That's sort of a membership or subscription instead of, just doing every project individually. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. It really just depends on your business. And I think over half of all online shoppers have some type of subscription box or service. And so, I'm not just talking Netflix. There's a lot of different things. They have boxes and subscriptions for your dogs and all kinds of things that are great. And so there may be a market for you, just even locally, to get those specialties out delivered to your customers, your folks. Market pop-up, pitch cart, delivery, mobile service, whatever it may be. A really good way to seek out growth opportunities is to make sure your financial risk is small and we'll get good feedback. And so if you have no idea if your product or service is needed in a new market, get the push-up cart and go check it out, right? Offer delivery as a value-added service for folks. If you were doing so during the pandemic because you had to, be careful about just not doing that anymore or stopping that, because the way we have experienced delivery of services, the touch of our fingertips, delivered to the curb, delivered to our house, there is a lot of that that's not going to go away. And you can take it away, but your customers are going to find it somewhere else. And so how do you really diversify that? You've got to stay focused on it, as hard as it is. And so you've got to make sure that you know the options that your customers are seeking, and you can go out there and get them. And so a good way to test that market is through the mobile and pop-up. You can also do pop-ups with your partners in stores down the street and invite them to come in and do a pop-up in your store if you have a retail storefront, right? Or maybe you want to test out the county down the road to see if the handkerchiefs that you're selling or anything that appeals to them. Ask a friend and you set up and do a pop-up at one of their special events on a monthly basis. Whatever it is, you can definitely reach new customers this way. You can deliver new products and services this way. It's a minimal cost compared to opening up an additional brick and mortar location or developing a whole new product line before you know that it's something that the market wants, right? Very important. So I encourage you guys to consider that. You know what third spaces are? We've talked about those in tourism and downtown development for years, but a third space is, it's not your office. Oh, not your office. Sorry about that. Not your home. April, I bet you saw that quickly, huh? It's really a gathering space, but it's not always the public park gathering space. It's a gathering space in your storefront, outside your building. It's the dog bowl right outside your front door. And while that may not automatically generate additional revenue, it brings a sense of inclusion if you're looking at the dog bowl type thing, but it can bring in new customer base and provide them other areas and opportunities to participate and transact and do business with you. And so put a seating area out front of your shop if you have a shop, right? If you are a service business, look for opportunities to bring your services to third spaces, okay? If you are a massage therapist, how cool. I just love it when I can go get I'm shopping and they've got somebody there offering, shoulder massages. Sign me up, right? So how can you bring your service or your products to a third space if you don't physically have a storefront? There are a lot of ways. And people are really craving craving the connection because we were, locked up for so long. But these unique experiential retail places and shopping experiences in downtown districts, that's what we want. That's where people are going. And so, how do you get your product and your service in those areas? And so, you just got to talk to people and build those relationships and make it happen if you don't physically have a storefront to build your own third space, right? I do want to mention that with remote work, and I think that a lot of people are going back to work right now. But generally speaking, I think that there will be a lot more work from home from now until eternity. And so I work from home when I'm cooped up in my office all day, we want to get out of the house and we want to go to these third places and experience something and get a cup of coffee. And maybe we don't want to be inside anymore because we've been inside. And so if you can put some sidewalk dining outside, not just during the pandemic when we, built out parking spaces for restaurants, we should be looking at ways to do that, not always on such a large scale, but on a mini scale all the time, as often as possible. And I know, if we could all sell things online, we would, but I cannot reiterate enough that there is just simply no longer a choice in not providing services and products online. Some businesses may be able to get away with it, right? But everybody's shopping online. They need to at least know what you have online. But it's a great way to generate additional revenue, and you don't have to put every item in your store or deliver all your classes virtually or do everyone's accounting software in an online system. It doesn't all have to be done virtually or electronically, but you have to provide customers the information they need online and the capability to do business with you online in some form or fashion, or I'm afraid the market's going to drive you or those of you who refuse to do that out at some point. And I'm sure there's exceptions to this rule, right? There are always some businesses that will thrive and survive just because it's who they are and they don't have to do any of this. But generally speaking, what can you set up online and bring in revenue? And if you don't have products, it's too much to think about getting the inventory online and all of this stuff. Can you book, if you have rental revenue, can you book your rooms online? There's ways to get money circulating online. And so I encourage you to think about e-commerce. E-commerce is way different than a website, but with Shopify and Square and Apple Pay, and there's so many different, services and platforms and opportunities to do that now. And so you really need to take a look at how you can provide something that you're doing online. Or if you have nothing, what else can you provide easily online? And let's create a whole new, not just diversify and up our chances for more money coming in. Let's create a different line and see if we can put it online. It's just so important. And advertising, marketing. So everybody's got something that somebody else wants, is what I like to say. And so whether you do a great newsletter, if you're a realtor and you have an awesome newsletter that gets sent out every month with community news that people love, there may be people who would love to mention their business name in it, right? And if you have, and depending on your local sign ordinance and stuff, so don't quote me on this, but maybe you have a great blank wall on the side of your business that could be some fantastic smaller business advertising opportunities that could bring in some passive revenue for you on every month. What about your website? If you already have a great website and you wish I would have shut up on that last slide because you're doing it right already, maybe there's others that could use exposure to the people that are buying stuff from you online. And so there's all kinds of ways to generate additional revenue through ad sales and ad dollars. And so I encourage you to see what you have that others don't. Is that your plumbing truck? We always see the plumber's name on the side of the truck or the air conditioning company. But there may be other businesses that would love that type of recognition. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know that I want my name on the side of the plumbing truck, but who knows? That may appeal to the hardware store, right? And so there's always something that someone has that somebody else wants. And so try to think about what that is and how can you monetize that to bring in a whole new source of revenue without having to do any additional work or investment, really just a little bit of time on the back end to get the opportunity out in front of the right folks and then to collect that revenue and to place those ads. We talked about the pop-ups a little bit with the mobile carts and the delivery services, but I want to talk a little bit about shared space pop-ups. and especially with supply chains and everything that's going on there. Um, you know, pop ups inside other stores is always a great idea, but more so inviting others to pop up in or up into your space, right? I know so many small businesses that have done that and they ended up loving the product, and the product was so good that it's a line that they carry now, even though it wasn't originally. And pop ups don't necessarily have to be others in your local business community. Talk to your vendors and the folks that you have products, because they will do that more than you think. And so they want to work with you to really get exposure for their product more so than what you're already providing just in your business. Shared spaces, I don't know if you want to call it co-ops, or, there's all kinds of micro markets. Um, Really something to consider. Smaller spaces, if you're in the real estate business and you've got a bunch of empty storefronts, you need to divide that space up, right? Because we need micro markets. We need that type of lower entry to the market, right? For rent and all that other stuff, less than our products. And it really helps the shopping experience. And so if you have room in your storefront to offer space to someone else, think about that. Help offset your rent with additional source of income. And so it's really a win-win. And so really get creative. And even if you're doing a weekly pop-up or a monthly pop-up, you can charge rent for some of that. I'm not saying, always do it, but you can. And so there's a lot of ways to make revenue that way as well. Talk about e-commerce and being online. And I put these in two different sides on purpose because it's so important. Let's talk about social media sales, right? Facebook Live auctions and Instagram stores. I mean, you can buy things straight from Instagram now. You don't even have to go to the store. And who knows what TikTok and all these other sites are going to be doing in the future. And so keep your eyes open to what is out there. If you're not following like businesses on social media, do so. And not to aspire to it's R&D, rip off and duplicate research and development, but to see what others are doing. Because it's changing constantly. And so while you may not be able to sell your service on Instagram, there may be a new platform coming out soon that would allow you to do that. Clubhouse is a great example of a brand new social media platform that's really transforming the landscape. If you haven't heard about it, Google it. I think it's open to everybody now, but it's not an all audio based platform. And so we don't know what's next. But be prepared and be nimble, and try to, if you can seize it right when it first comes out and be the first one in your community or the first one in your sector, your chances of really capitalizing and growing that diversification and revenue stream is so much greater than when you're late to the party. Then VIP and special events. If you have extra event space, great. Obviously, you need to rent it out. But what about closing your business, your storefront, whatever it may be, for a private event? People will pay good money to host their party or their wedding reception, maybe not a wedding reception, but some smaller reception somewhere that nobody else has done it, right? And so consider event venue rental income for your space. And then also VIP events. The term VIP, or limited number, is just sexy to people, right? And they will buy those tickets and they seek those experiences out. And so what type of VIP shopping experience and VIP customer appreciation things can you do? And so really look at that, and you can charge for some of that. Those additional perks and those additional services. Is it a glass of champagne while they're out shopping in your store? What is it? And don't be afraid to offer them a VIP experience. And, like we talked about earlier, subscription or membership in the VIP level is something people will pay for. And so there is a lot of opportunity out there to bring in additional revenue. Work together. There are all kinds of things that we can do when we partner, when we know our neighbors, and when we collaborate. And so I can't tell you what types of revenue diversification are out there if you do that, because the possibilities are endless. And so talk to your neighbors, talk to your chamber of commerce, talk to your business community, talk to your customers, talk to your vendors, talk to your neighboring businesses. Keep your ears and eyes open for opportunities for complementary products and services. Hey, what if we did a men's VIP experience? You sell barbecue, right? This guy over here is packaging beer, and we're good friends with the guy over there at the boat rental company. How fun would it? There's all types of partners and packages and tours and things that can be done. But if you're not open to them and you're not out having those conversations, you'll never know. And so I can't tell you the specifics on those because it just depends. And then use that same open-minded spirit and that same creativity that we talked about earlier when you think about labor. I know there's a labor shortage right now, and there may not be in a year when you guys are watching this, but what about shared employment opportunities? You know, do shared kitchens are a really cool thing that I've seen in a lot of downtowns that work. Pay your employees more. If you ever want to diversify revenue, you're going to have the labor and the staff to do so. And if you're not thinking creatively and openly about your employees and treating them right, you're never going to have the staff and the support to do the things that you need to do. And so whatever that is, do an employee satisfaction survey, and then make sure your employees feel honored and welcome and tell their story. Make sure they can tell your business story. And think about your hours. Hours are a good place to cut costs, and to really, I guess, you know, figure out who your market is first before you do it, right? But can we switch our hours and make everybody happier? Can we switch our hours and reach a whole new market? It can be revenue diversification as well. But always remember that the people are what makes us successful, all the time. And so consider that in everything that you do. I know that was a lot, and we're almost out of time. And like I said, I don't know what it is that your business does or doesn't do, but I know there are opportunities and ideas and creative ways for you to diversify your revenue. And so it's really just about getting out there, being brave and courageous, embracing whether it's a world disaster or just a little bit of fear you have about going and doing something new. Embrace that fear, embrace that courage, know your market and your customers, and just get out there and do it and take action one small step at a time. And that is it. I've got my contact information for you guys. And if you have any questions or have more specific questions, if you want to reach out and tell me what your business type is, I'd be happy to jump on a call and brainstorm some ideas, because we all need each other. WANEO is how my grandpa signed every letter he ever wrote me, and I'm a big believer in it. So I am here if you need me.
Sarah, that was absolutely riveting. I really appreciated all of your tips, particularly as it goes to partnering with businesses partnering together to stretch their employees or have a shared kitchen. What a fantastic way to look at things, especially right now as everyone is really kind of rethinking their business model. That was really interesting. Thank you very much for that.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me, April.
And I'll remind those of you that are watching the class today that Sarah is very happy to have you give her a call or reach out to her by email and let her just ask her some questions and chat with her about some of her ideas and some of her many years of experience in this field. Thank you again, Sarah. And I'll remind everyone that we have lots of classes available on our website, smithfieldtx.org, so check it out. That's the end of our class. Thanks, everybody.